Hello and welcome to Faithfully Stampin' with Jennifer Helm. I am Jennifer Helm, the Faithful Stamper, an independent demonstrator with Stampin' Up! And today I have for you a unique card design. This is a design I learned a long time ago. The name is changed because of a product we used, but it's a fun fold with a little twist. The top of the card opens like this with a little tab, and then you have a gatefold card as well. So I am calling this the Seasonal Labels Gatefold card because I am using for my flap here the largest of the dies from the Seasonal Labels die set, which is in our new 2021 holiday mini catalog. So if you don't have a demonstrator that you're currently working with and you'd like to see a catalog in person so you know what I'm talking about, get in touch with me and I'd be happy to send you one. So to start with, we're going to start with a piece of cardstock that is 8.5 by 11. I am using a crumb cake piece of cardstock. And if you have a paper trimmer or scoreboard, bring it over. This is our paper trimmer scorer. I need to open up my extendable arm here, because what we're going to do first is we're going to cut this down to 8.5-inch square. So the one side's already 8.5. We're just going to trim down that 11-inch side. You can save this scrap for another project. And move your cutting blade out of the way. We're just going to need to score for the rest of the project. And actually, I can go ahead and close that up. Score from one end at 2 1/8. And then turn your paper 180 degrees and score from the other edge 2 1/8. Then quarter turn in either direction, and you're going to score right down the middle at 4 1/4. And that is the extent of cutting and scoring for you this evening. So you should have a panel. Your square will have 2 long flaps on the sides, and then we'll fold down the middle, like so. So the next thing we're going to do is grab a pair of scissors, and we are going to cut off the top 2 long panels. So we're going to be left with one middle panel at the top and then the full bottom. And what I like to do on the at the midpoint here is cut right on the score line as neatly as possible, because we're going to see this. This is the top of our gatefold door. I don't worry quite so much about these lines because we're going to be cutting most of this panel off. That's going to be our fold over tab, so I don't have to worry quite so much about perfectly straight lines, but I still try to keep it pretty close. And so do that on both sides, into that score line, and then down. And hopefully you can see how our gatefold doors are going to be coming together, because we've got our gatefold at the bottom, and then we'll create our flap at the top. Now, what I like to do is go back and double check these. These are visible when we open the card, so sometimes my cutting isn't as on point as I would like it to be, and I might have to go back and trim a little bit just to make it look a little bit neater. Paper snips are great for this. Just because I don't want sloppy edges. That's much better. Okay. Here's the trickiest part of the whole thing. We want to take a large die, something that's about 4 inches wide. You want something that's going to be fairly wide to fill the width of your paper here. Too skinny and I think it wouldn't look right. So this, as I said, is the largest of the dies from the Seasonal Labels. So if you have other die sets that have a large die like this, you can definitely use them as well. I'm going to give you some suggestions at the end of the video for other die sets we have available now, and maybe even one that's retired. So what we're going to do, I'm going to show you this before I bring my die cut machine over. Go ahead and fold your gatefold doors in and turn your paper upside down. So your doors are on the bottom, and they're on my left here. What we're going to do is we're going to take our die and place it face down with one side of it just over the fold line, so where those gatefold doors are. And the reason we have it over the fold line is because we want to create that flap. We don't want to cut all the way through. We're not cutting out this whole shape. So you're going to want to center it, but keep the edge just over that fold line. Now, a little trick you can do to help you is grab a Post-it note, and you can help anchor your die so it stays in place as you're running it through your die cut machine. Just be careful, because sometimes the pressure from your die cut machine will actually leave a mark from your Post-it note. I had that happen on a card I was almost done with the other week, and ooh, I was irritated. So I'm going to move this out of the way for a second. I'm going to show you how I'm going to line this up on my platform before I run it through my die cut machine. It'll just be a little easier for you to see this first. One thing I love about our cut and emboss machine and all its pieces are that everything is labeled, so you can very easily know what you're putting together or what you need to die cut, emboss, whatever you're using the machine for. So I need platform number 1. This is your base platform. I need platform number 2 because I'm working with a thin die. And then I'm going to need a bottom plate. Mine's a little warped because I wasn't as diligent as I should be about running mine through my machine and then flipping it over, but it'll still work. And then I will need a top plate as well. So I've got 1, 2, and 3 lined up here. And then, this is the trick that I always have to remember. I'm going to take my cardstock, so my gatefold doors are here facing the bottom, and I'm going to actually slide it so the gatefold part is almost off the platform. Not completely, but almost. And then I'm going to turn this over because I think it's just going to work better for me this way. Less wobbles. Whoop. Then, once I've got that positioned and my dies are done wiggling around, this is the important step. Remember I said we're not cutting the whole thing out. So when you put your top plate on, what you want to do is line it up with that center score line. And this way you're not going to have your machine run all the way through, because it's not going to have that platform to keep pressing down. It's going to release the pressure and not make that final cut. So once you've got your sandwich ready, like this, and yours will be easier because you won't have a die cut machine to move around on your table. Take the whole thing, slide it in to the machine. I'm just going to double check one more time. Whoop. Sometimes you got to finagle those gatefold doors because they want to try to open on you. And I promise it's not actually this fussy. It's only because I'm on camera. Then go ahead and roll through your machine. Now, I didn't roll mine quite all the way through because I think mine shifted, and I didn't want to cut all the way through, but I'm good. So, I'll show you what you're going to end up with. You take your Post-it note off, move your die. Now, if you've done it correctly, and mine was pretty close, you're going to have your die cut, and it might not be 100% up to the top like mine is. Can you see how it's still attached a little bit? That's okay, because actually I can see the machine presses down enough on it that you can see where you need to trim off. You just need to take your scissors and trim in on that score line until it meets the edges of your shape. And then, since mine didn't come through quite perfectly, I'm just going to come back here and I'm going to follow that impression line that I can see to just cut off this last piece. And that leaves me with the flap that I was looking for. See how that works? Okay. Next, the hard part is done. You can breathe a sigh of relief now. I always do. Next, you are going to need 2 pieces of colored cardstock that measure 4 inches tall by 1 7/8 of an inch wide. And then 2 pieces of designer series paper that are 1 3/4 inches wide by 3 3/4 inches tall. So if you need to take a screenshot of that or jot that down quickly, there you go. And then what we're going to do is we're just going to layer these together with some adhesive. I have my Stampin' Seal Plus here tonight. It is my favorite adhesive. So I'm just going to put some adhesive on the backs of these. Now, when you are gluing your designer series paper to your cardstock, there's going to be a little bit more room at the top and the bottom than on the sides. It's a narrower margin on the sides. When I first started putting this card together, I kept thinking I was doing something wrong. Now, if you would like a wider border on all the sides, just make the paper a little narrower. But what I try to do is after I get one put together, I try to use that as a template for lining up the second piece. And that way my paper is not, there we go. I don't have one where I've got a bigger margin at the top or the bottom. I try to use them as a guide so I can kind of get it the same distance, if that makes sense. And that way I look more even. And obviously if you have a directional print, make sure it's going in the right direction. Now these we're going to glue on our gatefold doors. What I like to do for my first one, I'll turn it over so the outside of the card is up. And I'm going to put this panel on first. And let's see which direction you like best. Leave a border around all the edges. This one should be about even. Now that I've got the first one on, I'm going to go ahead and close up the second one because I'm going to do the same thing that I did with the paper here. I'm going to use this as a guide to make sure that they're even. I am not a perfectionist, but I don't like crooked paper. So, there we go. Now we just have to finish the inside and the top flap of the card. Now, for the inside of the card, you're going to need a piece of basic white that is 4 inches square. I'm going to pull out my Stampin' Pierce mat because I am using the Peaceful Deer stamp set. This is one from our new holiday catalog. Beautiful artwork and some great sentiments as well. So, it's a photopolymer stamp set. It's clear. And so it doesn't have that built-in cushion that the red rubber cling stamps have. So I just need a little extra cushion to give me a good impression underneath my stamping. So to start with, I'm going to use Early Evergreen ink and my sentiment. It's 4 inches square, so you don't have to finagle the direction. I'm going to put my sentiment there. Next, I'm going to take the little sleepy deer, as I call it, from the set and put him or her down here at the bottom. I'm also, while this is in my hand, I'm going to accent my envelope with it. I always like something on my envelopes. No plain envelopes. So that's ready to go now. And this is perfectly lovely, but I thought it needed just a little something else. So I'm going to take some crumb cake ink to match my cardstock. And there's a beautiful little snowflake flourish in the stamp set. And I'm just going to stamp it once and twice. And that just jazzes that right up. I love it. Super simple. Now, this is done. I'm going to set this to the side for a moment. And I want to focus on this flap. I'm going to be putting a label on, but as you can see, it's a little plain, and I thought it needs a little something. It's a little too plain for me. So I'm going to take a piece of scrap paper and my card, Excuse me. And from the same stamp set, that Peaceful Deer, I'm gonna pull back over my evening evergreen. I always want to make it early evergreen. And I'm just going to stamp these trees, first of all, off to the sides like this. And then I'm going to stamp close to the top so that these trees are peeking out from the tops of my card. And it just, I know this looks funny now, but when I put this label on, look at that. That gave me the little jazz that I wanted, very simply. So, one more piece of stamping to do. I'm going to use one of the deer stamps from the set, one of the larger ones, and I'm going to stamp in Soft Succulent. And let's see here. This I love because it comes out perfect every time. And it's this beautiful solid deer with some beautifully scrolled handwriting inside that says, "Oh, what fun." So I'm going to accent the front of my card with this. I just need to punch this out since obviously that shape isn't going on the front of my card. So I'm going to bring over our deer bundle, deer builder punch, and just pop this in here, line it up, and then once I have it situated, punch. And there's my little deer that's gonna put the finishing touch on my card. So, ink pads are all closed, and I'm ready to assemble. So, first up, I'm gonna take that inside piece, add a little adhesive, and position this on the middle of that center panel. And then I am going to glue this label on flat. I could pop it on dimensionals if I wanted to, but I thought the card had enough dimension already, a little extra thickness with the gatefold, so I don't want to add too much to it. You can mail this in a regular envelope. You may want to use one of the 2-ounce stamps just to be safe, but you can check with your local post office. So there's that label, and this is also part of the seasonal label set. It's the next size die down from that large one that I used for the flap. And I have some mini dimensionals I'm going to use to put on the back of my little deer. Not too many, just enough to keep him nice and level on the card in case it gets smushed in the mail. So, dimensional backings off. And this beautiful deer is going to get put right here on the front of that label. And then last but not least, I thought it needed a little bling. Christmas time is bright and shiny, right? So I'm going to add some classic rhinestones. And I'm using my Take Your Pick tool. This saves my fingernails, and more often than not, if I'm trying to use my fingernails, I'm shooting rhinestones across my office. The other day I walked around with one on me for quite a while before I noticed it. Stuck to my shirt. So my Take Your Pick tool just helps me not fling rhinestones quite so often. So there we go. That is a peek at our seasonal labels die-fold card. Gatefold card. Gracious. All right, so I want to show you a couple samples. This is actually turning the clock back. This is the first card I made in this design, and I know it's been over 10 years, probably a lot longer than that. This was when I was first learning about card making, long before I signed as a demonstrator, and so I didn't want to send this to anybody. I probably didn't know anybody getting married either, but it's a little cockeyed, but you can see the same concept. And this was why it was called the Deco Labels Gatefold, because this was a retired set of Deco label dies. But I just wanted to be nostalgic there for a minute. Now you can use any number of dies, anything that will work for your size. As I said, this is from the Seasonal Labels die set. For this one, I used the Tasteful Labels die set. So this is a little bit smaller, but it still works. And I layered it with another die cut from the set. Have a peachy day. I matched it with our beautiful Peach Designer Series paper and then stamped the inside. So this is great for any occasion. Now, if you have a set of dies that has graduated sizes, you can use it to dress up your little panel here, your flip fold. These are actually from the Hippo die set. It coordinates with our Hippo and Friends stamp set. So I know it sounds funny to say the Hippo die set, but there are hippos, sheep, and unicorns in that set, but then there are also these beautiful layered shapes, and more than just these. There are some that looks like labels too, so it's a great die set to have. So this one I used my cardstock and then a layer of Designer Series paper and then my sentiment. And this one's going out in the mail to a young lady. And then last but not least, if you are a longtime fan of Stampin' Up, you might have our retired celebration labels. Normally I don't show retired products on my videos, but I know I had a lot of customers that purchased this celebration label set, and this is perfect to use for this technique, so I wanted to point it out in case you have it in your stash. Again, I used the Designer Series paper on my flip fold tab there. This is going out to a very special young lady who's turning 5 next week. And I used our sweet little sheep from our celebration promotion that is going on right now if you're watching in August and September of 2021. So thank you so much for joining me today. If you haven't already, I would love it for you to subscribe to this YouTube channel. And that way you will see when I post my videos. I typically post twice a week. If you are a fan of Facebook, you can pop over to Facebook and find me at The Faithful Stamper. I do live videos there twice a week and talk about other card techniques and events as well. Thank you so much for joining me. I hope you have lots of crafting time. Take care. Happy crafting.